The following is a transcript of a conversation between Matías De Stefano, referred to as me, and his higher self, referred to as I am. 24th April 2021. Experimentation. Me. Speaking of expressiveness, it reminds me of what happens with a channeling. When I channel, the feeling I feel is as if something deep inside me wants to come out, and I can't control it, as if every cell in my body said, I need to live this. And there it happens, an internal force, which is me, but at the same time is not part of my personality, takes control of my body, being something I am not, and yet it feels like its own. What I mean by this is that sometimes channeling feels like a play, like the actor who is possessed by the spirit of the character, and that makes him interpret it with greater affinity and assertiveness. It creates a bond with the character, integrating it as his own life, part of his being. That's expressing. Channeling is a form of expressiveness. I am. In early human cultures, there were stories, legends that talked about birdmen, werewolves, and tree men, and many men who became animals or vegetables or minerals. This is because the first shamans learned and awakened their inner wisdom when they allowed themselves to be the object of study. To find power, they acted like a lion or a tiger. To learn balance, they acted like a heron. To learn patience, they acted like a tree. The performance, the attribute of moving as something else, allowed the cells, the mind, to see themselves reflected in it, and not only act like it, but take on its characteristics. Therefore, they dressed in the colors of these creatures, or dressed in their skins or feathers, performing dances in which they imitated their sounds or movements. The dramatization of an object or subject allows the embodiment of its potential within oneself. Me. That's something I learned from NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, people, who claim to be able to awaken attributes of others or correct conflicts just by modifying physical attitudes. For example, regain courage and security by walking more upright, or demonstrate confidence by stopping crossing your arms in a conversation. I am. That's right. The body is a network of data that reacts based on previous experiences and acts according to the expectations of living the same outcome. But if one consciously modifies the action from the physical in a situation in which one would normally act very differently, then the brain has no choice but to reconfigure that data and thus change the attitude, which would generate a basic transformation, which would give you a new attribute. Me. Wow, I find it fascinating. I am. It is. It's reprogramming. Channeling is another type of reprogramming in which you allow data from the external network to prompt you to act in a way that opens up your spectrum of information, and there you get attributes that you otherwise would never have been able to have. Me. But this can make us look crazy. I am. What is madness? Me. Well, it is not having control over oneself. It is losing the reins of the mental, emotional, and physical plane. How do I know how far I'm expressing and channeling, and when it's actually a delusion, or personality disorder, bipolarity, or schizophrenia syndrome? I am. Let's see then. What imposes sanity on a human being is cultural education. If in your city of Argentina, in the middle of the street traveled by people, or in a shopping center, you put a carpet and start leaning as if worshipping, talking to yourself, leaning over and resting your head on the ground with your palms toward the sky, what do you think they would say? Me. That I'm crazy. I am. And yet, that in Egypt is normal 5 times a day, starting at 4 a.m. and ending the last one at 7 p.m. If someone, a man for example, starts dancing ballet in the middle of the street in Cairo, what will they think? Me. That man is crazy. I am. Which wouldn't happen if you do it on a street in Germany, where they would see it as art. First, then, you must understand that madness is subjective to culture. What makes us seem sane is simply a perspective of tradition and custom, of an education linked to a specific group. Secondly, any expression outside that culture will be seen as madness, or in a special case, as genius, if the environment recognizes the originality of the action. When a musician is inspired, he is channeling. When a craftsman sculpts, he is channeling. When a poet writes, he is channeling. Inspiration based on the originality of an individual is a channeling, coming from channel, that is, being a means by which something intangible becomes tangible. The word comes from the Greek kanon, meaning rod or ruler to measure things, and from there pipe or reed, tubes through which things are measured or passed. The artistic canon is a term used to demonstrate the rules of a specific art, but all are based on the inspiration to pass something from one place to another, from the idea to the manifestation. In short, to channel is to act the idea that is inside. And now let's add to it what happens when a person recognizes himself as multidimensional, knowing that nothing is separate. Me. That the inside you are talking about is inside all dimensions, and therefore it will be able to channel itself from different realities. I am. Depending on the resonance it is in, whatever that channeling is willing to pass through will pass, whether it is pure water or the sewers. When a person vibrates low, the sewers hinder the quantum channels of the being, a kind of bad cholesterol at the etheric level that conditions the energy flow of the body, obstructing the channels. This leads to information not circulating naturally, causing perception disorders, which lead to neuronal malfunction, which ends up leading to bipolarity and schizophrenia, like many others. The only thing that differentiates a mental illness from an artistic or informative channeling is the vibrational state of the person, which makes these channels pure or impure, what we would translate into emotional state. A poor management of emotion is what leads a person without management of his consciousness to be a victim of his unconsciousness. Me. What would a correct emotional management look like? I am. Recognize that every emotion is my own, and that no one from outside can determine my emotion. Only I am the one who allows things to affect me. A bad emotional management is who does not recognize the different social agents, individuals that surround him, and mixes his internal world with the external world, forgetting the free will of others, involving others in their stories in an invasive and controlling way, and above all, damaging himself, coming to harm others. Me. I understand. I am. It is because of this vision that we have about the crazy ones. The people are afraid to express themselves, to show themselves, to channel, believing that by doing so they would lose control of things, when it is not the express of the problem, but the mismanagement of the emotions with which it is expressed. The constant repression after years of cultural imposition makes many emotions stagnate, such as shame, anger, resentment, lust, and several others, which at the moment of expressing the inner potential seek an escape, decorating, staining, smearing that internal power of these dirty emotions that, for not having been drained with wisdom over the years, they emerge together in a violent and chaotic manner. Me. How to express with wisdom? I am. Through experimentation, obviously. The second of the pillars or foundations of universal existence is the ability to try, to play with reality, to allow oneself to feel everything, to live everything without repressing anything. Experiment comes from the words ex, from one place to another, periri, to try, treat, and mento, tool, medium. Experimentation is the action of trying something outside the box. Me. We tend to relate experimentation to scientific experimentation. I am. Empiricism. In the 16th century to the 17th, philosophers began to turn to the sciences, such as mathematics, geometry, physics, and astronomy, which generated a scientific revolution in human life that we call rationalism, by which all things must be based on merely rational and tangible aspects. This marks a break between the substances soul and body, in which, until then, the spiritual world had guided realities. At that time, René Descartes said his phrase, "I think, therefore I am," assuming that thought is the basis of all existence, and what exists can only be perceived by the mind through experimentation. This made him the father of the scientific method, which marks a before and after of the sciences, which begin to be based on experimentation as the only way to obtain correct and credible, reasonable results. Faith is no longer enough, because believing is not a certainty, for in faith there is no empiricism. Therefore, all knowledge can only come from empirical experience, a redundancy, if you will, since both come from the word periri in Latin or peiron in Greek. Empirical equals to be testing something, experiment equals means by which something is proved. It can be internal or external experimentation, but for there to be knowledge or wisdom, it must have gone through the test of it. Me. Well, it is clear that someone wise can only be wise if he is an example from his experience. I am. And from here comes the idea of being experienced. Having experience in something gives us the endorsement, the justification, and guarantee of being able to do what we do. Now, to have experience, you have to live the experience, and in most cases, experimenting involves stepping out of the comfort zone to enter unfamiliar territory with unexpected results. This produces insecurity in most cultural beings, clinging to a way of seeing things. He is deprived of experience who does not travel, who does not eat other things, who does not talk to strangers, who does not open to know another culture, who does not read a book or watch a movie, is deprived of experience, who waits for things to happen instead of moving to happen. The fear of losing, of ridicule, of judgment, of not knowing, of being rejected, blocks the majority from carrying out their process of experimentation, and therefore restricting their path to wisdom. The stage of youth, from puberty to the end of adolescence, is the most important period for the development of experimentation. Me. And we are blocked by putting ourselves in a school where instead of experimenting, the only thing we do is devour books and content that we cannot prove. I am. The scientific method consumed itself through the educational enlightenment of the 18th century, in which more options for experimental development were given, and at the same time, the ability of children to live these experiments was blocked by filling them with results from those who had the possibilities to experiment. This only generates knowledge, data, but not education, and much less wisdom. Experimentation is not about sharing results, but about enabling empiricism. Me. I find it strange that a spirit would tell me that the spiritual key is the scientific experiment. I am. Because it is the only way that someone in the third dimension can relate to the world of ideas, and it is the only way in which the spirit can enjoy its own creation. Me. But you've told me about science. How do you practice experimentation in normal life? I am. The word science comes from the Indo-European ske, which means to cut, to slash something. Break into fragments. From there arises the verb skire, which means to know, that is, to have knowledge of the parts. The word scient unites sire and ent, entity, subject, that is, the subject or entity that thinks about the parts. It is interesting and funny that the word schizophrenia has the same origin as science. Schizophrenia equals skire, tear, split, and phren, being entrails, interior, soul, that is, which tears and splits the soul. Science refers, then, to that which disseminates, dissects things in order to know the parts that compose it. You have in mind an idea of science as an untouchable institution, far from the common human, when, in reality, science is the art of understanding the parts of things and experimenting with them. Me. So we could understand that in our natural, human, and everyday life, we have the opportunity to carry out our own scientific experimentations. I am. And it's very easy. All you have to do is start doing an activity that you've never done before. Me. Like what? I am. Try things you don't know. If you have never painted, then paint. If you've never played a musical instrument, then play one. If you've never cooked, cook. If you've never done math, do math. If you've never played a game, play. If you've never seen a series, watch one. If you've never cleaned a house, clean it. If you've never read a book, read. If you've never done gardening, tidy up the garden. Experimentation does not have to be in a laboratory. Scientific experiments do not have to be approved by an international entity. Experimentation is the action of testing ourselves in things that take us out of everyday life, routine comfort, and that give us something new information, which awakens in us wisdom. Me. I can see where today's proposal is going. I am. Imagine. Today, in relation to the heart, you will put the intention of doing something that you have never done before. To perform some activity for minimal time that is in a different space than the one you are used to, but that gives you something totally new and diverse. Do something new, different, unique, that however simple it may be is no less important. He who closes himself to experimentation is a being stuck in unconsciousness, denied the evolution of his being and his species. Each new action will awaken an impulse that will awaken a new emotion, and that emotion will be the key to your wisdom. For it is the emotion that registers the experience, and it is the same emotion that allows you to become master of those who seek. Me. This is how I design my emotion, experimenting to gain wisdom and share it with the world. I am. Live empiricism. Thought puts the intention of what you are, and what you are will be understood by thought, all through experience in action. Me. Trial and error. It's the real way to learn. I am. In rational empiricism, there is no sin, there is no judgment of error, but the path to evolution after trial and error. So this is my advice for whatever you decide to undertake as an experience today. Do not be afraid to make mistakes. Mistakes are the key to learning. Me. Let the magic be done. I am. Essence of praxis.